Hello, my name's Kelly, welcome to my channel, and as you can tell, or at least those of you who usually watch my channel, things have changed in the background here, and that is because I moved to Scotland. The last video I uploaded was a whole video that I'd actually filmed, some weeks previous before I left Australia. So far, like this channel, I've lived in Japan, I've lived in Australia, I've travelled through Asia, and now I live in Scotland. And prior to that, I think I filmed one video in the UK when I was visiting family in England, so it's been a bit all over the place, and I did have a couple of months left on my Australian visa, but the chance to study publishing at a university in Edinburgh came up, so I took it and I left, and it happened very suddenly, so I'm only just getting my feet under me, and I'm sort of starting to nest, which is why there will be a haul video quite soon. I'm just a bit annoyed because I'm waiting for my final package to arrive, and it has arrived, but it's been left with a neighbour, and I don't know what neighbour that is. So once I have them all together, then I will do a haul. But what I'm going to do right now, aside from make this announcement, hi, I live in Scotland now, is to do my third quarterly wrap-up covering July, August and September, because it is the 1st of October today, and that is that. So as you can imagine, I've been really busy, but I did manage to either read or listen to 7 books, and I'm going to talk about them here. So the first book I'm going to talk about is called The Star-Touched Queen by Chokshi, Roshani, and this I gave 3 out of 5 stars, and I'm kind of irritated that I have to talk about this first because I still don't really know what my issue was with it. All I know is that I struggled. I had to revisit passages, I had to reread sentences, I never really looked forward to it apart from at the very beginning. Because it's inspired by Hindu mythology and Indian culture, and that is very interesting, and it was very interesting, but it was all just so intangible and like hard to grasp and oblique, and it felt unnecessarily confusing. It was like reading a non-fiction book that was just so far beyond your experience that you had to really focus, and it's strange because that never happens to me with fiction. I expect if I read a fantasy book that it's not going to be that familiar to me, but see, I hate having to be this inarticulate at the beginning of a video. I don't know what my issue was. It's about a girl called Maya, who is the daughter of the Raja, one of many daughters of the Raja, and she, it so happens, was born with a very doomsday-ish horoscope, and the horoscope says that the man she marries will be the bringer of death and just doomed to all. So she's shunned because of her horoscope. She's born in a time when the horoscopes are very important and great stock is based on horoscopes. She is not accepted by her siblings. She is shunned by the women of the harem. She's feared by the court. She lives a very lonely life. On the day of an arranged wedding, things change, or start to change. She meets a mysterious man called Amar who rescues her, takes her to a mystical place called Akaran, and that is where things just get even stranger. It was if I ever understand how I feel about this book properly, I'll do a proper review. 3 out of 5 stars for now, and I'm just not going to say any more about it because I'm doing it no justice for the parts of it that are good. Like the writing was beautiful, and it was certainly very unique and original. I just felt like maybe it was too out there for me. The next book I have to talk about is called One by Sarah Crossan, which I read on the 2-hour flight between Cairns and Darwin, and it made me cry on the plane. It was really good, and the reason I was able to read it so quickly is because it's told in verse. I forgot the word then. It's told in verse, it's told short form, and despite that, it is a fully complete story, beginning, middle and end, and all characters are so well fleshed out. It's the story of Tippy and Grace, who are conjoined twins. Up until the beginning of the novel, they have been homeschooled, but you know, money difficulties and cutbacks mean that they are going to have to attend regular school with regular people and deal with all that that involves. Meanwhile, there's all sorts of things happening at home in the family life, and it was all just so real. I could really imagine all of it, and it made me think about things that I never thought about before. It was a very, very unique perspective to read from, and it was so well done, and again, I cried, and I suspect that anyone would cry reading it. I gave it 4 out of 5, probably, actually, I think it's more of a 4.5 out of 5. I just would have liked maybe a little more. I think the book ended in the right place, but I would like to know that there was a novella to follow it, to just sort of pick things up a little later down the line because of what happens in it, basically. Read One by Sarah Crossan. The next book is Ruined by Amy Tintera. Amy Tintera is the author of Reboot, which I really enjoyed, and this is the first book in a new trilogy, I'm guessing. It's the story of M, who is the surviving daughter of kind of the we'll call it the royal family of these people called the Ruined, and the Ruined have special powers, which mean that they are feared by the neighbouring countries. There is Lyra and one that I'm forgetting the name of, but they're feared by their neighbours because of their powers, and they're at war with them. So M is fueled by revenge because she watched her parents be murdered and her younger sister kidnapped, and at the start of the book she kills the princess of one of the kingdoms so that she can impersonate her and take her place in an arranged marriage to the Prince of Lyra, who is called Casimir. Okay, it was Prince Casimir. She goes to marry him with the intention of killing him and his whole family and getting some revenge, and you know, the Ruined as a people are dying out, so she wants to both save them and rescue her sister, who is one of the most, well, is the most powerful Ruined living. M herself doesn't have any Ruined powers. She's just completely blank in terms of that, which means that she is immune to them. So that I think will play a part in later books. Gave this a 3 out of 5 stars just because it started so dark, like with her murdering with that princess, like her heart full of like revenge, and then of course she meets the prince and falls in love with him, and although they are quite sweet together, you saw it coming so early on that it was, I couldn't really give it more than 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I have is a writing guide. It is Writing with Quiet Hands by Paula Munier, who is an author and literary agent and just a font of knowledge, which really comes across in this book. As you can tell, I have flagged it in many places. I will come back to this, which is why it's one of the few books that I actually carried with me from Australia. The rest are still there in boxes. So I really recommend this if you're into reading about writing, as I am. This is one of the more accessible ones, and one of the ones that you will want to dip back into constantly. Gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. The final 3 books I have to tell you about were actually audiobooks, because I haven't had time to really sit down and read, but I have been walking a lot, which has been perfect. So the first that I listened to was The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. If you don't know who Amanda Palmer is, she is a rock star, and she is also the first musician to make over $1 million on Kickstarter to fund her album. She's also the wife of Neil Gaiman, which is pretty cool. This is her memoir, and it really is what it says on the cover. It's about the art of asking. Her whole life is basically multiple examples of how to ask and also how to receive. And there's one long-running example where her husband is offering to help get her through a difficult stage, and they have a very unusual relationship, and she is resisting it. And you know, her whole life she's talked about crowdsourcing and trusting your fellow man and seeking help, and she's resisting it from this most important person. So that plays a part. The audiobook that I listened to was read by Amanda Palmer, and she did it very well, although I must say there are points, especially at the end of chapters, where I wish she would have just relied on the power of the words itself to end the chapter well, rather than leaning on sort of a quivering voice or a decreasing volume. Like, sometimes it felt a bit too sort of manipulative, and I don't know, I just rebelled against it. I was like, just deliver the words, don't, the words were enough. It's actually really, really, really well written. And the audiobook itself also features some songs of hers, which were really good. So I kind of think I might check out some of her music now that I've learned so much about her, because she was a complete unknown to me until then. I had sort of known about this book as one that kind of bridged the gap between biography and the self-help section at work, because it is definitely sort of self-development, I would say. And what did I give it? I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I still recommend, and yeah, 4 out of 5 stars, of course I recommend. That was The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. The second audiobook that I finally finished, and I say finally because I started it at the end of last year in physical form, was 1984 by George Orwell. I really struggled with this book. I started it, resumed it in the new year, decided that I would try audiobook, started it on the audiobook at a point when the main character Winston was reading aloud from the book, and it was like listening to a manual being read. I couldn't get through it, so I put it down. When I eventually resumed it many months later, I accidentally started at a later point in the story, which was a bit more exciting and encouraged me, okay, this whole reading aloud from the book part will not last forever. Persevere, Kelly. So I persevered, and the final third was a lot more fast-paced, much more happened, it was more interesting, but my word was it dark. This is not a book, in my opinion, that you enjoy. This is one that you get through because it's an exercise in depression, futility, and hopelessness, which I kind of admire. I kind of admire the fact that he didn't, the word I'm looking for is relentless. It was relentlessly stark. And if there were moments that make the reader think, oh, you know, it could go somewhere less grim, no, don't even bother thinking that. Because I thought that, and I was soundly, roundly corrected with that ending, which was actually incredibly dark. You know what? It may be the darkest thing I've ever read. Not because it's the most bloody, the most overtly brutal thing. It's just insidious, and it's soul-destroying, and it's recognisable, and it's tragic. So, 3 out of 5 stars for 1984, and having said all of that, I do think it's an important one for you to read, so if you haven't read it, by all means ignore me and go read it, but don't ignore this part. Just go read it. The final audiobook I have to tell you about, and also the final book for the third quarter of 2016, is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, which was read to me by Donald Sutherland, who has the most beautifully rich voice. Perfect choice to read this, and I really enjoyed this. This was far more gentle than 1984, although it still had some similarities in the sense of injustice and futility of places. Nowhere near as dark and stark, because the old man, one of the brightest points of this book is the old man's relationship with the boy, this boy who helps him and looks after him and who just really treasures and admires him. So that is, to me, it's shining light. The battle with the marlin, because this whole story is about this old man who is not caught a fish for 85 days, and he goes out further than anyone else into the sea on the 85th day to catch something and break his bad luck and hopefully be accepted back into the fishing community who think he's unlucky. The boy who used to go fishing with him is not allowed to by his parents anymore because the old man is unlucky. So he goes out there and it's about his battle with this massive marlin, which the battle didn't last quite as long as I thought it was going to. It was a big battle, but after it ended and I still had so much left to listen to, I realised, okay, so more is going to happen, and the more that happens is just, oh, I really felt for the old man. I think I've only just finished listening to this, so I haven't fully decided, but I think this for me is a 4 out of 5. Because why? Why is this a 4 out of 5? What would make it a 5 out of 5? I don't know. Just for my own personal interest and the enjoyment that I was able to take in it, I think this is a 4 out of 5. It was beautifully written, complete absence of female characters, but the descriptions of the sea and also like some of the finer points of fishing as a career, that was interesting to me. It was a full and complete story, albeit that when you see it in person, it's only about that thick. And I'm glad that I listened to it. Read to me by Donald Sutherland. Seriously good choice. So that is everything that I read or listened to in the 3rd quarter. It was only 7 books, so I think I'm only sitting at 27 books for the year, which is not very good, but when you consider everything else that has gone on, I can forgive myself, maybe. Let me know, guys, if you have read any of these books or want to read any of these books in the comments down below. And let me know if any of you are based in Scotland, because I don't know anyone here, apart from the people that I'm now meeting on my course. As ever, thank you very much for watching. Please follow me on Instagram, Twitter, anywhere you can find me basically, and join me on the next one. Bye!